You pick up your phone. Look at the screen. No messages. No missed calls. Maybe you think, they must be busy. And of course they are. They always are. But why does this silence weigh so heavily? It's a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It hides between the pauses, the days that pass with no news, the forgotten birthdays. It's when the phone doesn't ring that your heart begins to scream from the inside. You wonder if you're being dramatic, if you're expecting too much. But it's not about overreacting, it's about missing them. Missing the time when they were around more often, or at least more predictably. Missing a simple "Hi, Mom," or a "Just checking in, Dad." The silence may not be cruel by intention, but it's relentless in its consequence. And you feel it every single day. The pain of missing your children is one of those feelings many prefer to hide, because there's a quiet shame in admitting that yes, you miss them, that yes, that hurts, and that sometimes behind a polite smile, there's a heart overflowing with longing. We live in a world that says children grow up, move on, and that's natural. And it is. But no one tells you that once they leave, the emptiness they leave behind isn't so easy to fill. Not with hobbies, not with free time, because the love of a mother or father doesn't just mature into distance. It stays there, living inside you, waiting. This video isn't a criticism of children, and it's not a space for self-pity. It's first and foremost an invitation to self-compassion, a moment to say out loud, I feel alone, and sometimes I feel guilty for feeling that way. Let's talk about that guilt, about the silence, and more importantly, about how to care for your heart during this process, because you are not alone, and your feelings deserve to be heard. You wake up, make coffee, tidy up the house, do what needs to be done. And at some point in the day, almost without noticing, your thoughts wander to them. I wonder if they're okay. Did they think about me today? Sometimes you pick up your phone and scroll through that last WhatsApp message. It was weeks ago, or months. A quick reply, a dry emoji, a call you later. But later never came. Longing did. It came, and it stayed. And it's not just missing physical presence. It's the lack of being heard, of sharing, of that simple moment when someone asks how your day was, and truly wants to hear the answer. You miss being remembered, being included, being important, even from a distance. It hurts to realize that maybe to them, you've become just an occasional thought, something squeezed in between other obligations, as if love had a deadline, an expiration date, a scheduled time. And when you try to start a conversation, you sometimes sense that subtle disinterest. They answer quickly, change the subject, or end the call too soon, and you hang up with a lump in your throat, pretending everything's fine. But it's not, because their absence isn't just physical. It's the absence of presence, of affection, of reciprocity. And no matter how much you try to rationalize, emotional pain doesn't follow logic. It settles in slowly, like dust on old furniture. No sound, no warning, no drama. But it weighs a lot. Many parents feel ashamed to admit this. They think it's selfish or dramatic, that they need to accept it with maturity. But acceptance isn't the same as denying how you feel. You have the right to miss them. You have the right to feel hurt by the distance. You even have the right to say, I need this connection. Acknowledging the pain is the first step. Not to live in sorrow, but to start caring for yourself with more kindness. Because when contact disappears, what's left if you don't show yourself compassion is a silence that hurts. When children grow distant, it's common for guilt to follow the longing. It doesn't arrive with a scream. It creeps in quietly, whispering without asking permission. Maybe you find yourself thinking, what did I do wrong? Was I too strict as a mother? Was I absent as a father? Am I just reaping what I unknowingly sowed? These questions are born from pain, but also from a heart that loves deeply, because those who love often prefer to blame themselves rather than accept that life has moved on without them. Guilt is deceitful. It makes you replay past moments as if you could change them. It makes you punish yourself for choices that, at the time, seemed like the best you could make. It turns memories into judgments and erases the good that was there. But not all distance is caused by mistakes, and not all absence is your responsibility. Often, children grow up and drift away for reasons that have nothing to do with their parents. Stress, the rush of life, emotional struggles, unresolved inner conflicts. But when silence sets in, those who are left behind tend to fill the void with self-blame, and that becomes toxic. Not just for the heart, but for the body too. Constant guilt steals your sleep, your energy, your joy for life. It's like carrying a heavy suitcase you didn't even realize you were holding. And when you try to convince yourself they have their own lives, this is normal, you may understand it logically, but emotionally, the guilt is still there, hidden in the corners of your memory. If you feel this way, take a deep breath. You are not alone. Recognizing guilt is an important step. But even more important is asking yourself whether it's justified, whether it's rooted in truth, or just a reflection of how much you miss them. Because if you gave love, presence, effort, even if imperfect, you don't deserve to carry that weight alone. And before trying to rebuild any relationship, you need to free yourself from the invisible prison that guilt builds. When children drift away, the first emotional reaction is usually pain. Soon after, guilt often follows. But there's something even more essential in this journey: understanding what's truly behind that distance. The truth is, emotional distance isn't always a sign of lack of love. More often, it reflects the overwhelming nature of adult life, emotionally and physically, which, without notice, pushes family ties to the bottom of the list. Maybe your son or daughter is overwhelmed. Work stress, young children, financial pressures, marital struggles, emotional wounds you don't even know about. And in the middle of all that, maintaining deep family connections requires an energy they simply don't have right now. It's not fair, but it's also not necessarily personal. Other times, the distance comes from old wounds that were never addressed. Words that hurt, choices that were misunderstood, silences that left scars. And because no one taught them how to talk about those things, distance became their only way of self-protection. There are also children who don't know how to handle their parents' vulnerability. Seeing dad more fragile, or mom lonelier, triggers a feeling of helplessness that paralyzes them. They don't know what to say, don't know how to help, so they withdraw, just to avoid facing that discomfort. And then there are those who assume, if my parents aren't saying anything, everything must be fine. They don't realize the weight of that silence. They don't see the loneliness hiding behind, "I'm fine over here." The truth is, every story has layers. And blaming yourself without understanding those layers is unfair to you. But it's also unfair to expect emotional awareness from children who may not be capable of it yet. It's hard to admit. You raised them, fed them, loved them, taught them. And now, it feels like all of that has been forgotten. But maybe it hasn't. Maybe it's just buried beneath responsibilities, trauma, or emotional immaturity, none of which reflects your worth. You can't control what they feel or do, but you can change how you interpret the silence. Not every distance is a break. Not every absence is indifference. Sometimes it's just immaturity, or fear, or exhaustion. And in many cases, it has nothing to do with you. Before blaming yourself, try to understand. And more importantly, protect yourself. It's easy to mistake distance for lack of love. The absence of gestures, messages, and presence, it hurts like rejection. But is it always that? Sometimes, the child who rarely calls is the same one who cries when they hear your voice. The daughter who seems distant may reread your messages more often than you'd imagine. And silence, no matter how harsh it feels, can simply be a reflection of how each person learned, or didn't learn, to express affection. We live in a time where everything is urgent, fast, and replaceable. But the love between parents and children doesn't just vanish like that. It can hide. It can change form. It can even fall asleep. But it doesn't die overnight. It's important to understand that some people show love in indirect ways. Sometimes financial help replaces a hug. The birthday visit becomes a quick message in the family group chat. It's not ideal. It's not what you wish for. But it may be all they're able to give right now. That doesn't make your pain any less valid. But it can ease the weight of believing you are no longer loved. Separating love from presence is an act of emotional maturity. They don't always go hand in hand. And you don't have to suffer constantly because of that disconnect. Maybe your child is absent, yes. But maybe they still love you, in their own way. A way that, for now, may not be enough to sustain you, but is not entirely empty either. Recognizing that difference can help you breathe a little easier, can loosen the knot in your throat, and can open space for you to care for yourself with more compassion and less heaviness. Not all absence is lack of love, and not all love comes in the form we expect, but it can still exist, even in silence. After trying so hard to understand the reasons behind the distance, one essential question may remain. Now what? What do I do with all of this? You can't control your children's time, or the feelings they hide or avoid. You can't force a phone call, or demand someone to show love. But there's something far more powerful still in your hands. What you choose to do with what you feel. Guilt, when it's not justified, needs to be released. It's not a sign of love. It's a chain that keeps you from breathing. If you constantly ask yourself where you went wrong, you might be trying to find logic in something that involves emotions, stories, and decisions beyond your control. And the more you try to manage what's out of reach, the farther you move from what you actually can transform. What's within your control is how you treat yourself. It's the tone of your inner voice. It's the decision to stop punishing yourself for a past you can't change. You can choose to release the weight of feeling like you failed. You can start treating yourself with more compassion. To look at yourself with the same tenderness you gave others for so many years. And more. You can decide to stop pushing for connections that only bring pain. Sometimes, continuing to reach out to someone who won't respond just reopens wounds that need to heal. You don't have to cut ties, but you can loosen the rope that keeps you tied to suffering. Focus on what you can build from this point on. Even if it feels small, even if the path feels lonely at first. Letting go of guilt doesn't mean forgetting everything. It means accepting that you did the best you could, with what you had, at the time you had it. And that's enough. More than enough. That's honorable. Constant guilt paralyzes. But conscious self-responsibility sets you free. And with that freedom, we begin to rebuild what's been forgotten. Our care for ourselves. Recognizing the pain, understanding the causes, and releasing guilt is already a huge step forward. But what do you do with the emptiness that remains? This is where a new path begins. The path of caring for yourself, not in spite of the silence, but because of it. You spent years taking care of others. Your children, your home, your family. You put yourself second so many times that now, you may not even know where to begin. But starting over doesn't require haste. It requires presence. And presence begins with small daily gestures that reconnect you with what truly matters. 1. Rebuild your routine with intention. Think of your day as a blank canvas. You don't need to fill it with obligations, but with purpose. A morning walk, coffee without rushing, that book you left unfinished. These may seem simple, and they are, but they bring you back to yourself. 2. Engage in living spaces, community groups, neighborhood meetups, cultural or local events. Being among people with similar stories brings comfort and connection. You don't have to force extroversion. Just stay open, even if at first you're only there to listen. 3. Reconnect with what brings you joy. Music, crafting, gardening, writing, cooking. What matters is having a space where you feel whole, without needing anyone else's approval. Doing something just for yourself isn't selfish. It's emotional health. 4. Practice emotional self-care. Write letters you'll never send. Keep a private journal of your feelings. Allow yourself to feel anger, sadness, frustration, but also peace, gratitude, and pride. If possible, seek therapy. A professional listener can make a world of difference in this process. 5. Value the connections that remain. Sometimes, we're so focused on who left that we forget who's still around. A kind neighbor, an old friend, a distant relative who always checks in. Love doesn't have to come from just one place. It can be built and reciprocated in many forms. 6. Protect yourself from unnecessary triggers. Avoid comparing your family to others on social media. Avoid nurturing expectations that only lead to disappointment. And most importantly, don't use your children's silence as a measure of your worth. You are still worthy of love, even if that love comes from other sources, even if it has to be born, now, from within yourself. 7. Create a space for internal reconciliation, not with others, but with you. Forgive yourself for not being perfect. Thank yourself for doing so much with so little, and choose to live your next days with lightness, not pressure. External silence doesn't have to become internal silence. Your voice matters. Your feelings deserve care. Your story doesn't end with their distance. It can begin again through self-care, reconnection, and the conscious decision to live with emotional dignity. Because when you care for yourself, what's missing loses power, and what remains, you gains room to bloom. You're not here by accident. If you've made it this far, it's because you've carried the pain of feeling forgotten for a long time. But now it's time to remember. You still matter. Even if they don't call. Even if they don't visit. Even if birthdays pass unnoticed and Sundays are silent. Your worth isn't tied to anyone's presence or absence. You are whole. With your memories, your scars, your one-of-a-kind story. You are comfort, support, strength, and light. And nothing, absolutely nothing, can erase what you've built. The absence of your children does not define who you are. It doesn't take away the good you've planted, nor the dignity found in every gesture you made. Yes, rejection hurts, but it doesn't have the final word. The final word is belonging. Belonging to your own life, to your essence, to your time. You can and deserve to live without carrying the burden of guilt. You can and deserve to create new connections, even if they look different. Your presence in the world still matters, still touches lives, still has the power to bloom. Because even if they're far away, you're still here, whole, valuable, irreplaceable. We've reached the end of this path, at least for now. But maybe deep down, this is just the beginning of a new chapter in your life. A chapter where your value no longer depends on anyone else's presence. Where your peace no longer depends on what your children do or don't do. You no longer have to carry the weight of guilt alone, nor live in constant questioning about where you might have gone wrong. Maybe you didn't go wrong. Maybe you simply loved as deeply and sincerely as you knew how. And to love, even if it wasn't returned the way you hoped, was never a mistake. Now is the time to break free from the invisible chains tying you to the past. To make room for your joy, your emotional well-being, your peace. You can and should cultivate new forms of love. You can rediscover your strength in the small rituals of daily life. A quiet cup of coffee, an unhurried walk, a real conversation with someone who truly listens. You are not alone, and you no longer need to wait on those who can't or don't know how to show up. Life still pulses within you. There is still time to laugh, to feel proud, to rest without guilt. Rewriting your story with freedom doesn't mean erasing the past. It means honoring who you were and choosing from now on who you want to become. With lightness, with dignity, with freedom. If this message touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it too. Subscribe to the channel to keep receiving content that brings comfort, strength, and freedom. You deserve to live lightly, even after the pain. And we'll be here, whenever you need, walking right beside you.